So today's presentation is going to be about leveraging Drupal in the COVID-19 information crisis. Welcome. My name is Nick. The last name is pronounced Gajewski, which is a Swedish J and German W. We just went over this, but don't worry if you mispronounce it. Nick G is fine. It's been happening all my life. I'm a senior developer and tech lead at the Ontario Digital Service. And I'm also a senior developer and tech lead on COVID-19.ontario.ca. COVID-19.ontario.ca is supported by this talented group of developers, DevOps, content peeps, UXers, and PMs. So I'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helped us with this website. So shout outs to Andrew, Shakira, Megan, Kitty, Mayuri, Tina, Lee, Emily, Munich, Xiaopu, Danny, Jatin, Lucia, Sarah, Benna, Jennifer, Spencer, Justin, and probably many more. But it's been a crazy time, so I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone who's helped make COVID-19.ontario.ca everything it is. So a bit of a prologue first. So the first weeks and months of the COVID-19 pandemic were a challenging time for all. The pandemic presented unique challenges for the Ontario Digital Service as we were tasked with passing timely pandemic-related information along to the public. Information about emergency orders, testing, benefits, taxes and business supports were all in high demand and changing quickly, as was a growing list of stakeholders. The ODS decided to leverage our favorite CMS, Drupal, to help us meet some of these demands, and we'll go over some of what we did and how we did it here. So some context. So I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about the evolution of Ontario.ca or COVID-19.ontario.ca. So COVID-19.ontario.ca initially started as a fork of Alberta Health Services self-assessment tool. We'll share this afterwards. I forgot to share the links before, so we'll share the links with all the stuff afterwards. The Alberta Health Services open sourced their tool, and so we leveraged that and kind of augmented it to work for Ontario. But it was basically a series of yes or no questions to help you decide if you're experiencing COVID-like symptoms, what you should do. So should you go to a doctor? Should you get checked? Should you stay home? Should you self-isolate? Quickly, we learned that we needed to pass along more information to the public. So COVID-19.ontario.ca became a static site with more information for people. And because things started changing so quickly, specifically the case numbers and information about what you should do and where you should go, we decided to make this more dynamic because static sites are not great for updating. You have to commit stuff to Git and push it and wait for caches to clear and stuff like that. So after we did that, we started putting Drupal under the hood behind the scenes and making more and more of the site dynamic. Specifically the case numbers, we were doing releases daily, multiple times a day to update case numbers and messaging. By adding Drupal behind the scenes, we were able to make these editable and dynamic. So that was really important to us to free up developers to do other things. We were also adding lots of new users to the site to create and manage content. And you can see a little screenshot there of some of our users early on. More about that and how we worked with users later. After that, COVID-19 also brought on the Ontario Together initiative with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, which asked the public and businesses to help provide PPE supplies, identify business-related challenges, and crowdsourced COVID-19 related solutions. Behind the scenes, this was a series of web forms that integrated it with the Microsoft Dynamics CRM API. Once we had that going and we're crowdsourcing solutions, we built additional content types, views, and user groups to manage a B2B PPE directory, which is funny to say, which is a business-to-business personal protective equipment directory. More on, you can look that up online, Ontario Together. After that, we built a small business rent assistance calculator in Vue.js for the Ministry of Finance. We are about to launch a React-based app for visualizations from the Ministry of Health. There's talk of IBM Watson integration with the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. There's a phase 4 design coming soon, and so much more. So basically, in short, there was and is a lot going on. Today's focus is going to be on the tools and techniques that we use to build COVID-19.ontario.ca quickly and efficiently, and how you can use them too. So it'll be more of a focus on how we did what we did rather than what we did. And I hope this will serve a lot of you, because some of this stuff is straightforward and some of you may be experts, some may be juniors or intermediate developers. So hopefully this provides a good mix of stuff you knew about and maybe needed a refresher on, but maybe stuff you didn't know about either. So, enable to work quickly and efficiently. The first step is to enable your team to work efficiently. It's the first things first, work together better. So, use Slack and have a good wiki, which I think we all use those productivity tools, but integrate the two. So one thing we found when things are moving very quickly is that we really didn't want to be bothered with, reminding people of things, or like, how do I, because these questions come up often. How do I do this? What's this thing again? Blah, blah, blah. So here's an example of a Slackbot reminder we did. Good morning, it's Tuesday or Friday. So our release probably went out yesterday afternoon. Please remember to sync up your local environments so we're all on the same page. Thanks. And that link would point to our wiki, which would give developers just quick basic stuff on how to sync up their local environment. We were working with front-end developers, React developers, some Drupal developers, front-end developers. So just having these resources available for them at any time I thought was really helpful, and it's helped free up my time as a lead to work on other things. Here's another example. So Slackbot reminder, a stage refresh is happening in an hour. Please remember to reconfigure any pages products immediately after refresh. Have daily stand-ups, all hands releases, and ticket and Kanban everything. When things start going crazy on projects like they did on COVID-19, taking care of the little things is very, very important. So I know we all practice, or most of us probably practice some form of Agile, but daily stand-ups are very important. So we would have, here's an example. I'm not sure why it says Tuesday and Thursday. Believe me, these happened every day, sometimes multiple times a day. But at this time, we were doing releases twice a week. And so we'd have stand-ups every day. All hands releases are something that I've started working with a lot, and I find them very helpful. And so basically what this means is, like, anytime we do a release, we all jump on a Zoom call. So in this case, we had a Zoom call from 3 to 3:30. Oftentimes it doesn't even last that long. It could be like 15 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, depending on how big the release is, but everyone jumps on a Zoom call and we all QA everything together. That really helps for distributed teams, I think. And it's much better than Slack messages your Slack blowing up, or your email blowing up, or your Jira tickets blowing up because something's not working as it should. So I highly encourage people working distributedly to do that now. And of course, ticket and Kanban everything. Tickets are sometimes hard to maintain at the best of times, but when things are going crazy, it's very, very important. So, because you don't want something to accidentally squeak out in a release, in a production or stage release. So ticket everything, make sure everything, where everything is at all times. We use Jira at the ODS, but whatever software you use, I'm sure you can do something like that too. Switching gears, we'll talk about developers for a while. So in order to work quickly and efficiently, enable your developers to develop, build and debug faster and better, and make less mistakes. So first things first, set up a reliable local environment. At the ODS, we use Drupal VM. It works really well for us. Drupal VM allows you to create easily configurable local environments for your devs via a vagrant config YAML file. This config file is shared on our internal wiki, so new developers can get started quickly. We have a little startup guide, including this config file for how to get your Drupal VM running. Here's an example of a config file in Drupal VM, and you can see that in this file, we we set up the host name, so c19drupal.local. We give it some memory. In this particular case, we set it up with Nginx and Postgres. So out of the box, it works really well. We also have some installed extras. So Adminer is like a PHP MyAdmin tool. Drupal console Drush we'll talk about later, but they are Drupal command line tools. Mailhog is great for debugging emails. And then we, in this particular box, we packaged it up with Node.js 10 for our apps. We are POCing Docker solutions, but I've been using Drupal VM for about 2 years, and I highly recommend it as a solution for your team. Focus on code. So one thing I want to talk about is the @var PHP tags. I'm not sure how many people use this. I see it in some people's code. I don't see it in other people's code, but these are super handy. So @var PHP tags allow your code, use @var PHP tags in your code, so your IDE can help your developers with type hinting and code completion. So you can see an example on the right. Example on the right, we declare that Node implements Node interface. And then you can see below my IDE, once my IDE knows that, it's already giving me suggestions for methods that I could use on things. So on this particular node, I'm accessing the object or the language property, and I can get the ID and things like that. And this is great because as Drupal went from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, it's kind of become a soup of object-oriented things that maybe we're not all terribly familiar with or isn't at the top of our heads. So this little bit of code completion will help your juniors just code much quicker and less copy and pasting and looking for stuff on Google. Focus on code. Write defensive code. So use methods to check if a property exists before you access it. You never know what might change on a fast-moving project. So here's a couple of examples. In the first example, we are looking for a term's translation in French. But first, why don't we check if the term has a translation so we avoid any fatal errors or anything like that. So Drupal 8 provides all sorts of handy defensive functions like this. So this is an example of has translation. Below that, we are accessing a nodes field called section. But before we access that, we first check if it has it, and then we check if it's empty or not. So writing code like this is great. It's not only great for you as a developer, but it's great for your future developers that take your code and run with it. So having defensive functions like this will prevent, possibly fatal catastrophic errors due to edge cases later on. Like, oh, this one term doesn't have a translation and it breaks our entire website. So write defensively. Focus on code, human readable code. Write code that's easy to follow. For example, break up complicated conditionals into separate statements. No matter how many times your IDE tells you you can bring them together, because it will always tell you to bring your ifs together, separate them for readability. So here's an example that was in our code, which not terribly complicated, but it does take you like a few seconds. There are a few true or false things that could happen there. And this is like already too complicated, so don't do that. Break up your conditionals into smaller chunks, and if you can't, refactor. As a tech lead and sort of code manager, code reviewer, I'm a big fan of early escape functions or returns. I think it's called like the guard method. But early escapes from early returns from functions are great because they simplify some of the boilerplate edge cases that you might not want to worry about, and it improves readability. Set up a local services file. So by setting up a local services file and setting debug to true, your Drupal adds extra comments to your Twig HTML. So showing what template files are being used and providing template suggestions. So this is very handy for front-end developers and junior developers who are maybe new to Drupal. And this prevents things like searching the code base for strings or Google searching for what templates are working where, random var dumps and things like that. Create a local services file and share it on your wiki for your local developers to download. Debug with Kint. So Kint is a debugging tool that's available via the devel Kint module, and it's the best way to work with debugging data, in my opinion. So it shows you the available properties, but also available methods on objects. And it looks really nice. It's this blue thing, and it's all expandable. So here's a couple of examples. In this case, we are kinting a node, and you can see some of the static functions available on it there. But you also get, like, you can see that there's a get method, there's several cache methods available. If you go even further, you could see that, you know, it has the has field method, and things like is promoted, is new. So this is a very handy tool for developers, and because it's interactive, if you expand each of these, they actually give you a description of what, you know, a better description of what that method might do. But a word of warning, do not click on the plus signs. If you click on the plus signs, Kint tries to expand everything, which for local environments sometimes could take a while and freeze up your machine. Just because, you know, inheritance, object-oriented programming, there are sometimes hundreds of methods on things. So don't click on the plus signs, click on the blue bars, and this is a great way to debug in the browser. So use Drupal console to boilerplate everything. Drupal console is my favorite Drupal command line tool. Here are a couple of examples of, if you just type Drupal at your command line, you can generate boilerplates for most anything you have to do in Drupal. In this case on the right, you could see that you can generate forms, generate modules, all sorts of cool things. I'm going to do an example using this in just a second. Use Drush whenever you can. So Drush is my second favorite CLI tool now from Drupal. I use it all the time. So Drush stands for Drupal shell, and it's great for doing simple repetitive tasks that you do multiple times a minute while developing. So memorize your Drush commands. Believe me, you won't have to after just using it for a day or two. They'll all come to you and they'll be somewhere in the back of your mind. And put them in a wiki for your junior developers to be able to reference. Some of my faves, Drush CR, so Drush cache refresh, Drush updb, so update database. Here's one that a lot of people don't know about, but Drush CC render. So Drush CC still works in Drupal 8. You just have to pass it an argument. In this case, I'm telling it to clear the render caches. And the advantage of this over Drush CR is it's about twice as fast. So if you're developing in the front end and you're debugging something with templates, Drush CC render will save you, will be twice as fast as Drush CR, roughly. Drush CIM, so Drush import configuration, Drush CX configuration export, Drush EN to turn on a module, Drush PMU to uninstall a module, Drush WS to show, that's watchdog show, so that shows you your Drupal log messages. So if you're getting weird errors, this is a much quicker way to work rather than trying to click on the recent log entries in Drupal. Drush SQLQ is to run queries, SQL queries. And Drush SQL Sanitize is great. So if you're moving databases from production to stage or from stage to local, tools like Drush SQL Sanitize allow you to sanitize usernames, passwords. I believe they clear web form results and other things like that. So get used to using these tools. They're super handy and they will speed up your development time. So I'll do a bit of an example right now. And so I'm going to use Drupal console and Drush to generate a module, create permissions for that module, generate a config form for that module, enable and export the module. All right, let's do this. What can go wrong with a live example? So can everyone see my command line here? Cool. Excellent. So let's get started. So first things first, let's generate a module. So we'll go Drupal generate module. Of course, I'm in the wrong window. Drupal, I was in my host machine, not my VM. So Drupal generate module. And hopefully it'll prompt us for something. Okay, that took a little second, I don't know why. It's prompted us for a module name. So because this is a COVID-related project, I'm just gonna call this COVID XYZ. Machine name, sure, COVID_XYZ. Where do I want to put it? I want to put it in the custom modules folder. I'll give it a description. I'll say this is COVID XYZ module. Let's put it with the custom packages. It's a Drupal 8 module. Do I want to generate a module file? Sure I do. Do I want to build it as a feature? Heck no, we're in Drupal 8, no features. Do I want to build a composer file as part of this module? No, not right now, maybe later. Would I like to add any module dependencies? Sure, let's say this module depends on token and I don't know, path, auto. Do you want to generate a unit test class? Yes. Themable template, let's say no, but you could also generate templates as part of this. Would you like to proceed with this operation? Yes, I would. Boom, I have my module created. And so let's quickly look at my PHP storm here. For some reason my computer is being really slow. Let me just close this project. Let me see if I start up again, if it shows up. Okay, here we go. So we have some inversion files here, which are new to my repo. Here's my info file. Oh, it didn't do the dependencies for some reason. Well, either way, I hope you can see that it's mostly working. I'm not sure why the dependencies didn't get there, but I have a module file, I have an info file, and I have a new module folder here. Okay, let's continue. So let's say as part of my module, I need to generate some permissions. So Drupal generate permissions. I wonder if it's Zoom that's slowing down my computer. Let me close a couple of things here. I won't close Zoom. I will quit Firefox. And maybe I'll quit 1Password. Of course, they're all asking me to do things. I'm quitting. And you know what? I'll quit Spotify too. I don't think it's necessary right now. Okay, so let's continue. So we're building permissions. So enter the module name that I want to create permissions for. And so this will be COVID XYZ. Enter permissions. So we'll call this access XYZ. We'll enter the title of that permission, access XYZ, and a description. So this is a description. Restrict access? No, we don't want to set the message to people that this is, restricted access, so we won't do that. Would you like to enter another permission? We'll say no for now, but you can keep generating more and more permissions. So no. And as you can see, it's generated us a permissions YAML file. So if I open this up, we'll go down here, and here's my new permission. I'll enable this in a second. We'll see it from the Drupal side as well, but we do have a new permission right now that's called access XYZ. Lastly, let's generate a config form. This I find super helpful because I always forget some boilerplate code, and I'm copy and pasting stuff from Drupal core or from the internet is just, you're going to miss certain methods and things. So let's generate a config form. So Drupal generate config, form config. I spelled that wrong. That's not going to do anything. Okay, so let's generate config form. So for which module do I want to generate this for? So COVID XYZ. Enter a class name. We'll call it COVID XYZ form. There's the form ID that it generates from me automatically. Do I want to load this from a service from a container? No. Would you like to generate a config file? Sure. Do you want to generate a form structure? So this is when it becomes really cool. So I'm going to say yes. So it starts off by asking me, type a new field. So what kind of field do I want to make? Well, let's say I want to make a text field. So input name, I'm just going to call this field 1. I'm not going to be terribly creative. Machine name would be field 1. Minimum amount of characters. Let's make this a longer field. So it's 128 characters. the width of the field, but let's keep it at 64 so people are confused how long this field actually is. 64. And description. So this is my description or field. Boom. Default value, we're not going to bother with that. Weight will be 0. Let's do another field. So let's do checkboxes. Enter a label. I'm going to call this checkboxes field. There's the machine name that's generated for me. Options separated by comma. So option 1, option 2, option 3. Description. This is another description. And then we're going to just hit enter. We're just going to create these 2 fields for the simple config file. Hit enter. It's giving me a path. Yeah, let's take that path. Generate a menu link. Sure, let's generate a menu link. Title. Sure. I'm just going to go through these and just take the defaults. A lot of the times I do, and because I'm still confused sometimes about menu links, and sometimes there's several places you could define links in Drupal, and I kind of forget which one's which sometimes. But anyway, you can see that after I've gone through this, it's generated me a routing file, a link file, and a form file. So now that we have this, let's actually enable our module, and I'll show you some of these things we built, and then we'll do a bit of an export too. Actually, so drush en, and we called it COVID-XYZ. So this will turn on our module. I think it's the Zoom that's slowing me down. Really, this is lightning fast otherwise, believe me. Good, it's turned on. So now let's see what happens if we go to our browser. If I go to c19drupal.local, hopefully it's not going too slow. And this machine is legit too, so if this is slow, there's memory leaks in Zoom or something like that. So here we are. So if I go to extend, let's just see what happens here. If I look for XYZ, there it is. So I have my module, it's turned on. Hey, that's excellent. Let's see if our permissions are built. XYZ. There it is. We have access permissions right there. And lastly, let's check out our configuration form, which I think automatically gets dumped here. You can see we've used this a few times. Here we go. And here's the configuration form. So that's cool. So field 1, I'm just going to say this is a value. And I'm going to check options 1 and 3 and save it. So, and I'm not sure how long that's actually been, but I'm going to say roughly 5 minutes. So in the last 5 minutes, I've built a module. I've done a lot of boilerplating. And so let's now do a drush CX. So now we're going to export our configuration that we've just, we made the configuration form and we've made a configuration. So we're going to export everything. And we'll look at, I'm not actually going to do this, but because I'm working on some other stuff and this is just going to complicate my thing. But you can see, so right now it's trying to create a config file for my new module. It's exporting my core extension YAML file, which is telling Drupal to turn on my module and doing a few other things. So yeah, so in the span of like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I've boilerplated a module. I've created a module file, created permissions to use, and created a configuration form. So I hope you can see how powerful that is for creating new content quickly and correctly, where you're not sort of Googling what methods you need to add to a configuration form or what sort of class you need to extend. This takes care of all of the guesswork and you're ready to go now. Now you could go about the hard part, which is writing your custom code. Okay, that went pretty well. It's a little slow, otherwise good. So let's keep going. So part of enabling your team to work quickly is enabling your contributors to work effectively. And The nice part of that is that way they'll leave your developers alone to worry about development. So part of enabling your contributors is to create a trusted contributor role on your site and staff it well. So shout outs to Mayuri and Tina if they're on the call. So at the ODS, we create a trusted contributor role and give this role a lot of the warning, this permission has security implications, type permissions. So not all of them, maybe not ones that are like system level, but in terms of, we create this role and they usually help us by helping regular contributors by creating and managing content and taxonomies, creating and managing user accounts, managing day-to-day contributor needs and troubleshooting. So, I can't log in, I forgot my 2FA, where's my page, why is it not saving, things like that. And these trusted contributors help by identifying bugs and possible improvements in your contributor experience. Bonus, have your trusted contributors create and maintain a user guide for you and your users. That way they have something to reference to when they're in a hurry making content. This one's a little silly, but use the shortcuts menu. So create shortcuts for common tasks your users are doing. Don't ignore this handy feature like I used to. I would completely ignore this module and menu, but I've started using it because I've learned that you can create different shortcut menus for different user groups and assign them on a per user basis. So you can create shortcuts for your regular contributors, you can create a separate shortcuts menu for your trusted contributors, and just fill them full of links that they are for functionality that they commonly use. Very handy feature. I used to ignore it, now I use it all the time. Part of working quickly is also leveraging the Drupal community to help extend your Drupal functionality so you could write less code and work more efficiently. So in this part, I'm just going to go over a few modules that we use and have used on COVID-19 and use otherwise. So here's another silly one, but the admin toolbar module. Man, I love this module. It's totally not sexy. It doesn't do anything amazing, but oh my God, it saves me minutes a day, hours a week, and probably before I leave this earth, it'll shave years off my life. So the admin toolbar module and the admin toolbar extras module, they provide a dynamic drop-down JavaScript menu for the admin menu. They provide extra links for managing entities. So you can see here that I think out of the box, Drupal does not provide links to manage form displays and certain deeper links in entities. And they provide extra links for developers like flushing caches, running crons. There's a variable editor there, I think, and a few other things. Use the config suite of modules. So there's the config ignore module, the config split module, and the config filter module. The config filter module is a requirement of the former two. It doesn't actually do anything, or it does a lot, but not for your users anyway. So this group of modules allow you to ignore certain configurations, which is great for web forms and blocks, which are sort of like content, but also sort of like configuration. And I think Drupal can't figure out which it is. And it allows you to set different configurations for your different environments without having to get DevOps involved. So let's say, for example, your Drupal site is talking to an API, and you have obviously a staging and production environment. So by using the config split or config ignore module, you can tell it to ignore certain fields in your configuration. So let's say endpoints, or you could say, hey, my stage endpoint is this, and my production endpoint is this. And just by using the config split module, Drupal, once you release your code to production, it will know to use that different endpoint that you have set up for your production environment. And yeah, leave DevOps alone. They've got enough to worry about. Okay, so use the Workbench suite of modules. So this involves the Workbench module and the Workbench Access module. So the Workbench module gives you menu links and editable views for users to create and find their content. So their most recent content they can edit. The Workbench Access module allows you to put users into sections for CRUD-like permissions on content. And the Workbench Access module works on taxonomies. So it's really straightforward, but you create a taxonomy and you then assign that taxonomy to content and to users. And then those two are bound. And so users that are attached to that taxonomy can only edit content attached to that taxonomy. Both these modules are highly extendable too. So Workbench is just a bunch of views. So you can edit those views, export that configuration if you need some extra views or extra filters or something. And the Workbench Access module just uses the Drupal's own access system and extends that. So you could extend that further or extend it via like node access hooks or entity access hooks. So both are super handy and super extendable. Use permission polyfill modules. So shout outs to Andrew, senior developer of the ODS, for coming up with this name because they are permissions polyfills. What they do is they give you extra permissions that aren't there out of the box. So view unpublished module and the node override node options module. So these contents give you these modules give you per content permissions for viewing unpublished content, publishing content, and editing other fields related to revisions, authoring information, and promotion options. So oftentimes these are shut out from like lower tier contributors on your site, but with this you can give contributors on your site access to publish and edit publishing information for specific content types. Word of warning, I wrote that they may conflict with the Workbench access module, and now I can confirm they definitely do. So they're great, but make sure you double check all your permissions if you're using, let's say, Workbench access and some of these other modules. Use the redirect module. Here's one that we haven't used very much in the past. We would often rely on DevOps or creating some other functionality for redirecting a content. But this module allows you to, your users to easily create redirects. And then it also allows you to automatically generate redirects when content's title change. When a content's title change, if the title affects the URL. So these are both essential for a fast-moving site. A site like this has a lot of eyes on it, and our content is changing all the time. We don't really want to worry about managing redirects and having users, end up on a 404 page or some SEO complaints start coming up. So this module is great for just allowing your users to create redirects to the content which they are editing. We're going to wrapping up here, but just one more thing I really want to talk about, which is the use the decoupled blocks suite of modules. Here is a cool set of modules that new Nick at the ODS found. So there's the decoupled blocks module and the decoupled blocks Vue.js module. This is super cool. I'll read you the official description and then I'll give you the quick version of it. So this module is a JavaScript framework agnostic progressive decoupling tool to allow custom blocks to be written by front-end developers in the JavaScript framework of their choice without needing to know Drupal's APIs. Well, that's a mouthful. Basically what it means is you could write JavaScript apps and plug them into Drupal and use them as blocks, which is great. And there's no overhead. Basically, the overhead involves, on the right, you can see you have to write a YAML file. The YAML file exposes certain fields, and then those fields, just behind that YAML file, you can see the Drupal version of that YAML file. That allows, so that ties into the Drupal settings object, JavaScript object, and allows you to pass Drupal settings made in Drupal into your JavaScript applications. So it's super cool. And that leads us to our last slide. Epilogue, circle of life. So giving back to the community. So we built a small business rent assistance calculator, and COVID-19.ontario.ca started by forking Alberta's health services assessment tool. So this week, the ODS open sourced our small business rent assistance calculator on GitHub for others to use. And we were able to do it super easily using that decoupled blocks module. We wrote a Vue.js app, and it was very easy to decouple it from Drupal and put it in GitHub and share it with the community. And that feels pretty good. So that's it. Thanks for listening. Any questions?
Awesome, Nick. Thank you so much. That's amazing. I've got lots of new modules to look into at the bottom of the list. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, pop them in the chat. But I put one in there to start. Just a quick question on the Drupal VM performance on Mac. So we've experimented with Lando quite a while ago now, but generally ran into Docker-related performance issues with any VM thing that was Docker-based exclusively on the Mac was where the problems were. Any comments on that?
From my understanding, it's been the opposite. So I run a Mac here, and I think it's an i7 with 16 gigabytes of memory, but there's no problems. Everything works super, super fast, and basically it works out of the box. So I just download the VM, config file, and it goes, no problem. I found people with lighter machines. So I think one of our developers was using like an i3 or something like that from 2016, and that seemed to like, whereas I can run commands here super quick. When we were working on her machine, I could like sort of sometimes count a second or two before things were going. But apart from that, if you have a powerful machine, no problems. We did run into some issues with permissions on Windows machines and a couple on Linux machines, but we were able to figure them all out. But the really neat thing about this is basically like out of the box, drag and drop, just seems to work on OS X.
Awesome, thank you.
And that's why we haven't explored Docker too much, because we keep hearing that it was a bit slow and kind of, but right now we have a POC going. A fellow developer built a POC, so we're going to start testing out moving to containerized solution.
Yeah, I used to run a VM a lot, and it never had a problem. It works really good. The only thing is the size of every time you build, it's like over a gig every time you build, right? And you have to move things around, but you never had a problem. So I really like it. And then about 2 years ago, we switched to Lando, Docker, just because of our CI and CD, because the way we are building the theme and all that stuff, right? So for all the developers backend and all that stuff was building on Git pull. So we had to switch. We had a lot of problems, but to be honest, we did a Lando custom build and we don't have any problems anymore.
Awesome.
So one thing I will say is one thing is it might be the way you work. So I'm lucky enough to be a one project a day mostly kind of person. So I can just run this VM and I'm not worried about other products really. If you're in a different environment where you're maybe trying to run 2 or 3 virtual machines, that's when maybe you can get this one.
That's right, yeah.
Perfect. So Nick, I know you have a hard stop in 2 minutes. So thank you so much for your time today. And it was an awesome presentation. I also do want to just say, as someone who's been using your website during these difficult times, like thank you to you and your team for putting it together. Like it's definitely been amazing and helpful. And so thank you for what you do. That's awesome. So I'm gonna just, let's see here. I'm gonna just do a quick screen share on our close slide. And I just wanna say to everyone who's on the line here, please do go to bit.ly/DTO-3, which is our survey for the session today. Please do go there now and give us your feedback. I know we're not gonna bother with that in the future. And then just wanted to highlight for our next meetup, we're gonna skip July and go straight probably to August. And this is a new idea we're experimenting with which we're seeing if we can get folks to do a 5-minute recap of some video from DrupalCon Global that they didn't do. It's not their own session, but just give us a 5-minute recap of that, say an overview of the session, what you got out of it, and where you're going next on that topic. And so we're looking for folks who want to participate on this to reply to the survey and let us know over there with their email address inside of there so we can get some participants on there. And so we'll schedule this in August if there is enough folks who are interested in participating with and trying out this sort of lightning talk format. So I know, so thank you very much everyone for attending. As part of the meetup now, we can, if you have a few moments, we're gonna stay on the line and just go turn on grid view on your talk, and we just